Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of DEI Deathwatch, where we chronicle the downfall and the doubling down of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm your host, Scribelight. Welcome to Monday. As I said on the Discord server earlier, I thought today was Monday. Instead, it was migraine day. That's how my day started. And it's still kind of going on, a little bit soreness there. But I think I'm conscious enough to sally forth, as it were, into the wonderful world of latest news on DEI, and boy howdy, we got news. But before I get into the news, who's joining me on this beautiful Monday afternoon? Noah Sencio, hello. Abdicatus Diaboli, hello. Walter Tomaszewski, hello. Hello, Scribe, you must rate with my cats. They've cooked up some ravioli and chocolate mouse, brewed some cat porcino, and baked a persimmon cake for you. You know, I believe you've used the persimmon pun before, but all the same. Blue-Eyed Scream, good afternoon. Mike R, hello. Shady Grin, good afternoon. Mike Savage, Blarg. Miranda Stone is here. Guys, I don't know if you know about Miranda Stone, but on the distant channel. Good afternoon. Kiro Soldier, hello. Jill Powers, good afternoon. Twisted Skipster, hello. Daryl Odell, hello. The lovely Sherry, as opposed to all other Sherrys, hello. Somnambular Nation, good afternoon. Simon Willikins, hello. And Attack Alpaca, good afternoon. The Luke Skywalker 2, good afternoon. And I think that's everybody. If I missed you, if you're lurking, if you're in the future, good afternoon and welcome to the show. Oh, also Anthem Ward, hello. So let's start off with our top story. Our top story. Oh my gosh. Now, as I start this, I am hoping that because this was a public video, federal disclosure video, that I'm not going to have to deal with copyright claims. So we're going to try this. I will, just for the sake of safety, occasionally pause, but it's only a 4-minute long video. But about 2 days ago, the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, put out an announcement regarding some cuts coming to federal spending at the Pentagon. And boy, oh boy, several things we've talked about on the channel before when it comes to federal spending and programs that are institutionally discriminatory. So let's take a listen to this. At worst, I've got an article version of this if I need to read it, but I thought we'd watch the video.
When President Trump appointed me as your Secretary of War, I made you a series of promises. I promised that every single one of your taxpayer dollars would go toward one thing and one thing only: building the most lethal fighting force on the planet.
Lethal fighting force. I didn't even notice before, he has an American flag pocket square. America.
And I promised we would gut the corruptive, unconstitutional, non-merit-based DEI programs that have weakened our military and distracted us from our primary mission.
Yeah, if only we can see that happen across the board. Not only federally, but also state by state. That's going to be a tougher row to hoe.
And I promised we would hunt down the waste, the fraud, and the abuse that has run rampant in the department for decades, and to instead redirect that money to President Trump's America First priorities.
Mm-hmm.
Well, today, we are once again taking action on these promises.
I am kind of surprised that it took over a year, or not almost over a year, but about a year to get to this. But I guess better late than never.
We're actually taking a sledgehammer to the oldest DEI program in the federal government, a program few people outside of Washington have ever heard of, that I hadn't heard of. It's called the 8A program. Now, if you're like me, you're asking yourself, what is an 8A?
I always think of like Section 8, you know, whether it's housing or Wasn't it if someone was in the military and they were deemed to be mentally unfit, weren't they called a Section 8 as well?
It's a great question. 8A refers to the Small Business Administration's program to assist, quote, small disadvantaged businesses owned by a socially disadvantaged individual or tribe.
Socially disadvantaged. That's a unique way of saying anybody who isn't white.
End quote. Providing these small businesses with opportunities is a laudable goal. But over the decades, as it happens, the 8A program has morphed into swamp code words for DEI, race-based contracting.
Now, see, I could imagine that, and I don't know the history of 8A, but I could imagine that it was one of those programs that started up in the same vein as original affirmative action. And affirmative action in the early years after the Civil Rights Act, I've talked about the fact that once the Civil Rights Act went into effect, certainly it said from this point forward, we shall no longer under law allow for the discrimination of people on the basis of race, gender, and so on. But there was a reasonable understanding that just because you've drawn this line now doesn't mean that everybody that has existed prior to this point hasn't been, institutionally disadvantaged in a very tangible sense for decades previous and generations previous. So to have a period of time after the Civil Rights Act to try to make up for lost time and to try to benefit those people who have been living under such restrictive laws previously made moral sense. And it still makes moral sense to me now. The problem is how long those programs last. Affirmative action in colleges being the most prominent, of course, where I've said before, I think a reasonable period of time for such accommodations to last would be about a generation, or approximately 30 years. So affirmative action in colleges, as an example, I think should have ended sometime around the mid-1990s. And yet it kept going and going and going until 2023. Something like what he's describing here, again, I could see being a quasi-reasonable thing to have in place for about 30 years. But obviously we're far past that, so.
And here's the worst part. In many, many instances, these socially disadvantaged businesses, they don't even do work.
And where have we heard a lot of that lately? Similar themes. Daycare centers, hospice centers, Minnesota, California, Washington State, and elsewise, and other places being looked into, where you have these businesses that just, because of a line item somewhere or an automatic bureaucratic check that's cut every, something just gets money, whether or not they're actually doing anything. There is so much waste and abuse and fraud. And I'm glad that people are finally paying attention to it. The question is, will it actually be rooted out to any meaningful degree?
They take a 10%, 20%, sometimes 50% fee off the top, and then pass the contract off to a giant consulting firm, commonly known as Beltway bandits. For decades, this program, 8A, has been a breeding ground for fraud, and this administration is finally doing something about it. The Department of Justice, under Attorney General Pam Bondi, recently exposed $500 million in 8A fraud.
$500 million? That's a drop in the bucket.
Treasury, led by Secretary Bessent, found another $250 million, and their investigation is just beginning.
Oh, good.
Treasury, Justice, and the Small Business Administration under Administrator Loeffler are all actively investigating their 8A contracts right now.
And so here's what my question will be. I wouldn't expect any of the Democrat-led states to do similar audits, but what will the Republican or conservative-led states do after something like this, and plus all the other things found in Minnesota and elsewise? Because you know that there's stuff like this in every state. And it might be an honest mistake or, one of those bureaucratic Kafka traps or something. But really, every state and the federal government needs to go through an audit like this. It's obviously been going on for far, far too long. Billions and billions of dollars are being wasted, and you have plenty of states increasing taxes to make up for budget shortfalls. Well, where are those budget shortfalls coming from? Could it be massive wasteful spending that they've just written off as that's the way things are without actually looking into them? Probably.
Now, in the Pentagon, $100 million sole source contracts go out the door to these 8A firms almost every day.
Every day!
$100 million sole source contracts go out our door to these 8A firms almost every day without any competition or opportunity for anyone else to bid. The Department of War is required by law to do almost $100 billion worth of contracts per year with small businesses, including 8A firms.
You know, it really ticks me off, and some people have made jokes about this, but, you know, there's always a sort of clown crying sensation to some of these jokes. It's like, golly gee, why did I go to college? Why did I earn a degree? Why did I work and save all these years and toil away getting up at 4 a.m. and on and on and on, when I could have just opened up a fake daycare center? It can be very demoralizing to know that there are thieves and grifters and everybody else living off of incompetent government programs and incompetent government functionaries when the rest of us are just trying to get by. And don't even, I mean, the prospect, I see some of these daycare grifters, they've got their houses and their mansions and stuff. I couldn't even hope in any reasonable sense to own a home in the near future, let alone, I mean, maybe in my golden years I can find some shack or something. But myself, my sister, people, and we afford our own home. Yeah, maybe if I move off into the middle of the boonies somewhere away from everything that I know or something. You scrimp and you save and you put stuff away hoping that the worst doesn't happen and all of your savings are going to be drained out by some disease or something, and somebody opens up a fake business that the government just starts paying checks out to without asking any questions. Hard work. An honest day's wage. Who cares?
Seems 8A is quite important. But we're not required to pay enormous brokerage fees, only to have these firms pass those contracts along to giant consulting companies. And we won't. We're not doing this anymore.
Until the next administration that's run by a Democrat comes in. Yeah, and I think he says something to that effect here in a moment, or mentions something like that, and I hope it's true.
So effective immediately, I'm ordering a line-by-line review of every small business sole source 8A contract that is over $20 million. And we'll look at everything smaller than that too. The Department of War has the biggest chunk of it, more than any other agency. So our cleanup, it's going to be 10 times tougher.
I hope so.
It's a two-stage mission. First, if a contract doesn't make us more lethal, it's gone. We have no room in our budget for wasteful DEI contracts that don't help us win wars, period, full stop. Second, we're doing away with these pass-through schemes. We'll make sure that every small business getting a contract is the one actually doing the work, and not just some shell company funneling your money to a giant consulting firm. This approach is, of course, not meant to hurt small businesses, and that's not the point. America is full of great, amazing small businesses.
But that will be the narrative line by the other side. That Trump's Department of War victimizes minority small businesses. You know, penalizes businesses for having non-white owners or something.
This is part of a larger effort to transform our acquisition ecosystem into one that makes sense for the threats we face in the 21st century. I gave a long speech about this back in November. Our goal is to spend your money to build our defense industrial base with businesses large and small that share our mission, not to line the pockets of Beltway fraudsters or to advance the agenda of DEI apologists. Only lethality, and we're going to look at every single contract.
Okay, well, I hope that sets the stage for other such things going on and inspires other states to do similar things because, yeah, I just, like I say, it's a real demoralizing thing to see people that you know in your family, your friends, people in my audience who are just honest, working people trying to get by, and yet you've got these scammers, fraudsters, thieves, and con artists who are being backed up by governmental institutions and an entire political, ideological faction pretending like they're victims or something. Just to push their own agenda and everything else. It just, let's see. What are you guys saying in the chat here? Also, let me put the music back on. Get on my music. Let's see. Scribe, to be fair, DEI might be contributing to any budget shortfall, but it probably isn't the cause of it. No. It's not the end all be all. No, it's not the end all be all. But programs that are wasteful, programs that are discriminatory, programs that dole out money blindly, without seeing a return on it, whether it's DEI related or not. If Minnesota is only one example of this, every state needs to do an audit. And if the lowest hanging fruit is daycare institutions or healthcare institutions that haven't been checked on to see if they're actually doing any work, start there. Domino effect. Other things will hopefully be found. The question is, who's willing to do it? And if you say no, why are you saying no? Why, if you're a state government or official or otherwise that is adamantly against an audit of taxpayer money, why? Why shouldn't there be a regular audit? Why shouldn't you look into these things? You're being put as a steward of the taxpayer dollar for the benefit of the taxpayer. If you're afraid of an audit, or someone tries to oppose an audit, in my book, that'd be a quick mark to vote that person out of office. It's not your money. You're there to take care of the money for the people in their benefit, in the overall, not just give it away because you have some kind of ideological agenda towards not, I don't see nothing. Nope, no fraud here. As long as it's going to the kinds of people I like or ostensibly to... No. Just... This is what we get for not scamming. I know! Like I said before, speaking of DEI, with the knowledge that I absorbed about DEI lingo and philosophy within the first 2 or 3 years of my covering this stuff when my channel started, I could have hung out a shingle and called myself a DEI consultant and probably cleaned up. For as much as DEI consultants and trainers got paychecks for, oh man, in those heydays, 2017 through 2019, boy howdy, I could have made a mint. Oh well, that's what you get for having some integrity, I suppose. But anyway, so that is the Department of War going to do a line-by-line item audit on all of their 8A contracts to make sure that it's going towards a company that's actually doing something for our military and isn't just some kind of going off into the phantom realm. We'll see how it turns out. I mean, it's, again, with all of these promises and all these declarations, it's great to hear. I'm glad that someone's saying something about it. But the proof is in the pudding. What do they find? How much do they effectively save? And if they find people that have been scamming the government for years, what's the follow-up? Because it's not just a matter of, we spent some money we shouldn't have. If someone comported themselves to be a company contributing to the federal government in some way, shape, or form, but weren't, that's fraud. And there have to be consequences. For all of this stuff, my end-all, be-all desire is to see consequences befall those individuals and entities that have been breaking the law, federal law and elsewise. Otherwise, this stuff will just happen again. If there's not something put in place either legislatively, if there's not something put in place legal precedent-wise, the spigot will just turn on again by the time the wheel turns, and a Democrat's in the White House again. It's just likely. GX Rocks, the dude from the video has a really distorted reality. He said any small business and then adds the 20 million. You immediately can see there are no small businesses at all. Maybe you're not familiar with the regular budgets of small businesses. And he also said anything below that. So, and also the definition of small business in governmental terms. I mean, you think of small business, you think of like a mom and pop shop at the corner store or something. Yeah, that's a small business. But in the governmental and federal sense of the word of small businesses are not small in that regard. So that does constitute small businesses in relative terms in this country. But yeah, he's going 20 million and down. Yeah, so he's not wrong. I mean, once he gets down to like a mom and pop business or something, and especially if you have like a daycare center that's accepting, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars over a couple of years. All right. Well, anyway, so that's the the Department of War. And fingers crossed, knock Formica, that it actually works and actually results in something. But moving on. Let's go to Time Magazine. I haven't done an article from Time Magazine in a while. But Time Magazine wants us to know how DEI must change in 2026 to survive. So even Time is on a death watch of a kind. Let's take a look. This week marks 1 year since the Trump administration issued its first executive orders targeting corporate diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, and many leaders remain stuck between fending off external attacks and meeting the needs of diverse workforces. Quote, "You still have an obligation to do right by all your workers," says Lily Zhang, an inclusion consultant and author of a new book, Fixing Fairness. An inclusion consultant. Okay, so she has a financial investment and financial care into DEI surviving, because that's her business. Okay. Successfully meeting those obligations requires looking past the buzzwords driving culture wars and, quote, creating real value by solving real problems for real people, unquote. All right, well, I'll ask the same thing I've asked for years. What is the ROI on DEI? All by its lonesome, has earned companies money year over year. And then tell me why companies have been systematically cutting their DEI budgets since roundabouts fall of 2022. To help leaders do that, Zhang's book introduces a new framework called FAIR. Oh boy! You know, I like it when I hear a new possible buzzword or buzz phrase that might become the standard in the mainstream. So let's see what this one is. FAIR, which stands for Fairness, Access, Inclusion, and Representation. Okay, so just same words for the same thing. So diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging is now fairness, access, inclusion, and representation. Okay, 6 of one thing, half a dozen of the other. Quote, "It's a matter of identifying where your workplace falls, fixing those problems, and making a better workplace for everyone," Zhang says. Okay. What is a problem that needs to be fixed? How do I know a workplace has a problem? Right? Because most DEI consultants, they go in and one of the first things they do is effectively a racial audit. What is the demographic split of your workforce? And if there's too much of white people, then you have a problem. So I hope in this article she tells us what those problems, those sort of boilerplate identifiable problems would be. To understand how DEI efforts need to evolve in 2026 and beyond, no, sorry, not DEI efforts, FAIR efforts. FAIR efforts. Her book is called Fixing Fairness. We spoke with Zhang. Below are excerpts from our conversation, edited for length and clarity. Okay. How does your new framework, FAIR, differ from what you call legacy DEI? Good question. Legacy DEI targets the behaviors and mindsets of individuals rather than environments. Legacy DEI targets the behaviors and mindsets of individuals rather than environments. No, it targets demographic split on a racial and gender basis. And then you have meaningless DEI trainings to try to shame people into seeing themselves as either racists or victims. That's racists or sexists. And I'll summarize. Villains or victims. You're either a villain or you're a victim. It tends to focus on cliques and small groups of employees and can be zero-sum in how it's framed. Well, it does promote ERGs, so it creates cliques and small groups of employees. Okay. The 4 tenets of FAIR are the inverse. Outcomes over intentions. How is equity not an outcome-based element in DEI? Systems over self-help. Coalitions over cliques. Coalitions over cliques. How was ERGs with their associative allyship not a coalition? And win-win over zero-sum. It's not just a communications rebrand. Could have fooled me. It's not just that we're avoiding the letters DEI and trying to replace it with FAIR. It's that the work itself is evolving. The work. Oh God, the work. I like how she's trying to head off the obvious criticisms at the pass by saying, no, this isn't just a simple rebrand. No, it's a completely different framework that still retains all of the original goals and virtues of DEI. For example, we often use the tongue-in-cheek term food, flags, and fun to talk about common DEI-related events. Okay, I've been covering DEI since 2016. I don't believe I've ever heard the phrase food, flags, and fun in relation to DEI anything. But if you say so, maybe it's your personal consulting business thing. It's a Heritage Month. Let's wave some flags, get some food, and have some fun, FAIR would say. That's not effective. You're not solving any problems. You're not changing systems. FAIR represents a far higher standard that has to become the minimum for this work. Okay, so the DEI rebrand that you, as an inclusion consultant, have created for your business and with a book you have to sell is the only answer to this problem. You have the salve for this wound. I mean, it really does help if you're a monopoly, I suppose. This is back to Time Magazine. That distinction leads to a different approach to the idea of representation. Wait, is that a question? Time, are you actually asking her questions or just facilitating her philosophy? And how does that lead to a different approach of the idea of representation? Just means, do we have the demographic split that makes us feel good about ourselves aesthetically? Right? Like, does our workforce reflect the communities we serve, quote unquote? Or does our workforce reflect the reality around us, and so on? And if it doesn't, how do we engineer it to do so? And if our only metric for knowing that there's a problem is how many of this kind of people are versus this other kind of people, then any mechanism you use to solve for that problem is going to step on civil rights laws. But anyway, yes, for decades now, when we've talked about increasing representation, we think about the number of women or the number of people of color going up within that organization. Yes. Okay, that is DEI, the basis of DEI in a nutshell. The FAIR framework recognizes that not only have we really struggled to change those numbers, our focus on the identity boxes might actually be incentivizing unintended negative consequences such as token... Wait. Wait. Our focus on identity boxes might actually be incentivizing unintended negative consequences such as tokenism. Might. You know, it's really taken this long for us to understand that giving a value to someone in an organization, first and foremost on their skin color, and also putting monetary incentives towards executives to fill out those DEI quotas might lead to tokenism. What a shock! If this was a bingo card moment, I'd be circling, benevolent condescension. Are you kidding me right now? There's no way any one leader can check everybody's identity box at the same time. Well, I mean, if you use only the most obvious surface level attributes of an individual, it's very easy. What is your color? What is your gender? The orientation one is the one that always kind of confuses me as to how you would determine that in polite society at the workplace. But how do you represent everyone when you have limited people in positions of power? Well, here's the thought. Don't think of representation as a skin color question or a gender question, because they don't represent anybody but themselves. This isn't an elected office. Either you can do the job or you can't do the job. I guess my question for our speaker would be this, or our author, or interviewee. Why does anybody need to be represented? In the demographic sense, why does anyone need to be represented or to be thought to be a representative of their demographic? Why can't you just hire people that know what they're doing, regardless of what they look like? You know, on this day of all days, and by the way, for the sake of the record, this is the day we celebrate Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. On this day of all days, let's remember the sentiment he put out there in his I Have a Dream speech, where people should be assessed on the content of their character and not the color of their skin, or on their merit and not on their surface level attributes. But here we are. How do you represent everyone when you have limited people in positions of power? The answer is trust. We need to have leaders who, regardless of whatever identity boxes they check, are in community with us. They understand our needs. Who are you talking about? We may not agree with them all the time, but they speak with a true understanding of what I care about and what I need. Those skills that can be developed. Those are skills that can be developed. It's your ability to critically think, your ability to connect with people, to process disagreement, to handle differences, to create strong relationships, to build trust. That's a far more proactive way to treat this work than the blunt force instrument of, do you check the same box as me? Okay, well, first and foremost, again, maybe I'm very old-fashioned here. When I go to work, when I'm employed by a business, the question is, am I fulfilling the needs of the company first and foremost? I mean, aside from the basic respect and or creature comforts of working in an office place, if you still work in an office place, what do you mean, what I need? How can I best serve the company that is paying my paycheck? And other than that, your ability to critically think, your ability to connect with people, to process disagreement, to handle differences, to create strong relationships, to build trust. So you're talking about leadership skills. Oh my gosh, guys, did you know that leadership skills can be very valuable in a business setting? I would love for her to give us an active example of how fair isn't DEI. Because so far, this is avoiding the question. She keeps mentioning representation. Well, how do you achieve these goals? What is the problem that FAIR attempts to solve? If FAIR is applied at a business, how do you assess the business for what needs to be addressed? Back to time. How do you recommend addressing disparities between groups? Okay, disparities. A disparity does not inherently indicate an inequity. A difference in number between demographics does not mean that racism or sexism is taking place, or something else sinister is occurring. But moving on, the answer is targeted universalism. Wow, I haven't heard that in forever. Oh man, there was was it a TEDx talk or a panel discussion? This is from like 3 years ago or something, where they brought up that same phrase. I'm always looking out for the next big buzzword or buzz phrase that's going to overtake, the coffee table books or the mainstream. Targeted universalism. I've got this image of like 3 people on a stage or 2 people on a stage with like a blue background, and one's interviewing the other one, and they're talking about targeted universalism. I think was it a 2-parter I did? Oh man. The things I remember. The answer is targeted universalism, an idea that was developed by the Othering and Belonging Institute at UC Berkeley. Oh yeah. I think the people from the Othering and Belonging Institute either did an article on that or they were at the talk. Wow, blast from the past. It says we need to recognize that we are different. Duh. We need to use those disparities to understand our shared environment so that we can fix it for everybody. Give me an example. What are you talking about? One company I worked with had a gender disparity. And it was a complicated one. Men occupied most of the positions of power, but they were also the most miserable. Women had the best sense of well-being, but how do you measure that? But were way underrepresented in leadership. Rather than point fingers and say who is to blame or who is the oppressor, we instead asked, why is this happening? And what conclusion did you come to? It turned out that this company had a culture of overwork that put really unrealistic expectations on its leaders that could only be fulfilled if they had a stay-at-home wife. We challenged that and said, what might better for everyone look like? How can we improve wellness for men? How can we improve promotion odds for women? So you're saying that high-pressure leadership jobs are high-pressure leadership jobs. And if you put a woman into one of those leadership jobs, they're going to be happy? And if you demote men to lesser jobs, they won't be miserable? Except that most of the men are probably there earning money to support their families and stay-at-home wives. Would women not have a stay-at-home husband? What? Editor's note. In Fixing Fairness, Zhang shares some of the initiatives they piloted to change the organization's culture of overwork, including scheduling messages, communicating a right to disconnect, and adapting recognition and promotion processes to reward productivity and efficiency rather than long hours. As a result, gender disparities in wellness, promotion time, and leadership positions began to close. Quote, we had made enormous strides in resolving gender disparity, but had hardly ever talked about gender, Zhang writes. But the very metrics you're using to measure a problem are based entirely on gender. Okay. Back to time. How do you translate that approach in designing better workplaces? The complementary idea behind targeted universalism, is the curb cut effect, which refers to the part of sidewalks that curve downwards. They were made as an accessibility regulation, but if you've ever used a bike, had a roller, luggage, or pushed a stroller, you have inadvertently benefited from this design improvement. I've heard someone use that same analogy before. Also, back to the previous thing, we hardly ever talked about gender. That was your first indicator that there was a quote-unquote problem. There's a disparity. Therefore, we have to solve for it. We're not going to place any blame. We're still going to engineer things to solve for the disparity. Because it's a problem that there are too many men here and women there. Anyway, back to the curb thing. It's a really good example of targeted universalism in action. When we design for people who are marginalized, yes, because having a slope out of a curb isn't meant for people with feet as well. Anyway, we have a worse experience in the status quo. We actually benefit all of us. That applies to so many more things besides sidewalks. It applies to good product design. It applies to the employee experience. Okay, so what you're saying is that DEI, where DEI would go into a business and assess the business on a demographic level to identify where problem areas exist, FAIR goes into a business and identifies where there's a demographic problem then that's a problem that needs to be solved. It's the exact same thing. And you can gussy it up with whatever sugar-coated language you want, or, oh, we weren't looking at placing blame. We were just trying to even out the scores and everything else. And suddenly everything opened up into other opportunities. You won't give us an example of what this business was. You won't give us any numbers of how things changed. You'll just say that things changed. Where is the poster child? Right? I mean, if DEI has to change and simply rebranding it and giving some new, purple prose to try to describe your process is how it's going to change, it's not changing anything. To change, it would have to be different than what it was, and it's not. You see, just like what the ultimate results of DEI are, not DEIR the letter, but DEIARE, an aesthetic change to DEI does not make it better. An aesthetic change to a business does not inherently make it better. What is it actually doing? It's still valuing people on the basis of their demographic. Men are too many in leadership. Women are not. Obviously, this is inherently wrong. And not wrong on a sort of calculated level, but wrong on a moral level. And we have to fix for that. That's a problem that needs to be solved. We're not saying there's sexism going on at this company. We're just going to try to make sure that you're aware of your sexism as we go forward. It's just DEI. And I like that, it's her own proprietary rebranding of it with her own book and her own framework. This is the way. Do you know the way? Advocatus, is that a woman or a man, though? What is a woman? Let's see. Summer Learning Series, Episode 3, Targeted Universalism in Public Health and Healthcare. Is that what I covered? Because was it this video? Oh, it could have been. Yes, it could have very well have been. Let's see. Oh, that's somebody else's video. No, this was actually like some kind of TED Talk or some event where you had people being interviewed on a stage about targeted universalism. I wonder who. Oh, who wrote the Book of Love? No. Hold on a second. Let me just check my own channel because it's been a while. It's been a while since I heard that phrase before. Universalism. Yes, okay. The Sunday stream from 2 years ago. It's a two-parter, Targeted Universalism. And yes, it was always a Google Cloud event. That's what it was. Okay, so I'm going to put the link to it in the chat now, unless Advocatus just beat me to it. It's possible. No. So yeah, there's the link in the chat to episode 1 of 2. I had to do 2 streams on this because I was so curious about it. And this was 2 years ago. or let's see, it says 2 years ago. September 3rd, 2023. So 2 and some odd years ago. Yeah, that was supposed to be DEI version 2. Back in 2023. And our speaker, our author, in 2026 is now saying this is how DEI needs to evolve. They pitched this 3 years ago and it didn't take off, and they're trying again. And it's the exact same tune. Second verse, same as the first. Moving on. Speaking of magazines that are always for DEI, let's look at Forbes. Yes, Forbes, one of the greatest publication cheerleaders of DEI. Let's see if there's anything different here. And it's our old friend Julie Kratz. Julie Kratz, a cheerleader for DEI if ever I read one. How to pivot your DEI strategy when the playbook changes. For years, many corporate leaders have followed a specific diversity, equity, and inclusion playbook, establish identity-based support, set representation goals, illegal quotas, and lift specific groups, demographics, through specialized programming to tell you how racist you are or how much of a victim you are. But as leaders already know, the ground is shifting. Between a 2023 Supreme Court decision on affirmative action and a growing political spotlight on corporate inclusion efforts, many leaders are feeling a sense of overwhelm. Feeling a sense of overwhelm and urgency to shift how they talk about DEI. How they talk about DEI, or just simply getting rid of it? The question I'm hearing, the author says, most often in my workshops and coaching sessions is, quote, Julie, how do we keep going without the legal or political risk, unquote? Golly, hey, Julie, how do we continue violating long-standing civil rights laws and recent Supreme Court declarations without getting caught? That's really what the question they're asking is. How do we keep doing this without getting caught? The answer isn't to retreat, it's to pivot. You know, matrix dodge. To protect your workplace culture and ensure long-term talent retention, you have to move from performative and identity-based tactics to more systemic, longer-term strategies. This is why I was excited to interview two, the text is being cut off here, two something and DEI thought leaders. And the names are cut off. Thanks so much, Forbes. This is my last free article, and while you're telling me that, you're going to cut off the text. All right. As an inclusive leadership trainer, I often tell my clients that clarity is the antidote to fear. When leaders fear making mistakes, they freeze. In Yoshino and Glasgow's research at the Meltzer Center at New York University. Glasgow Center. I think I've quoted these guys before too. I think these are the guys that were saying there was some kind of legal escape hatch around the Civil Rights Act for DEI that has never, they cited some case that had never been quoted in anything I'd ever read about DEI previously. Anyway, they identified a simple framework, a new framework, the 3 Ps. You know, I kind of enjoy fair better. It rolls off the tongue better if I say 3 Ps. 3PO, to help leaders assess whether a DEI program is legally risky. Well, here's my first question. Do you place a value on an employee on the basis of their race, their gender, their ethnicity, their religion? And by value, either elevating or denigrating. If the answer is yes, anyway, as Yoshino and Glasgow see it, a program becomes legally risky only if it involves all 3 Ps. Okay, number 1, preference, placing an emphasis on a specific group. Do you mean demographic? It doesn't require all 3 Ps then. Number 2, protected group, focusing solely on a legally protected class like race or gender. Well, here's the thing. If you place an emphasis on a specific group, like if a DEI consultant comes into a company and says, golly gee, I see the problem. There are too many white men leading this company. Anything that follows after that as a solution, you're setting yourself up for legal difficulties if someone decides to pursue it. Protected group, focusing solely on a legally protected class like race or gender. Well, what other specific group would you be talking about other than race, gender, and so on? Unless you're talking about like ethnicity or country of origin. 3, palpable benefit, affecting something significant like promotion, pay, or a job offer. Okay, if you remove just one of these P's, your program likely stands on solid ground. So wait, if I remove the preference part of it, and I say I'm focusing on a particularly legally protected class like race or gender for promotions, I'm on firm legal footing? If I place emphasis on a specific group, whatever that means, for promotion, pay, or a job offer, I'm on legally protected footing? If I take away the job offer benefit, and I have not tangible monetary benefits, but I'm giving special treatment to people on the basis of what group or class they're in, I'm on legally firm ground? This doesn't sound right to me. Okay. From lifting to leveling. Yeah, we're not doing equity anymore, guys, where we're working on equality of outcome, where we're going to take a demographic that we see as someone we need to take pity on and artificially raising them up. No, we're going to level. You know, we're going to Harrison Bergeron this shit until we're right at the sweet spot. In the old playbook, we focused on lifting, taking an individual from a historically marginalized group and providing them with specialized support for success. Yeah, taking pity on someone because you assume that they're incapable of taking care of themselves because of what they look like. We're totally not doing that anymore. While sponsorship and mentoring are vital, lifting is a more legally vulnerable strategy. Please tell me you're just going to simply swap labels on this one. Yoshino and Glasgow see the more sustainable approach for the future of workplace culture as leveling. Instead of creating new support mechanisms, we fix the floor for everyone. That sounds like lowering standards so that no one can fail. And then you can never be accused of artificially lifting anybody up. Now, does that sound conspiratorial? Okay, leveling is a systemic de-biasing approach. It means, 1, auditing job descriptions for unnecessary prerequisites that filter out talented candidates. You know how previously we asked that you have at least a 4-year degree in a business realm or equitable experience in your job history? Yeah, we're just going to do away with that. That filters out people with talent and skill and knowledge. We don't want that. So, step number 1, lower the standards. Step number 2, implementing standardized performance reviews to ensure objective criteria drive rewards. Objective criteria drive rewards. Standard. I'd need some more context of that one. Number 3, expanding the applicant pool rather than setting rigid identity-based quotas. Okay, well, if you're having to change yourself from having rigid identity-based quotas, you're already breaking the law. Now, how do you mean by expanding the applicant pool? By what process would you do that? When you level the playing field, you aren't just helping diverse talent. When you lower the standards to the baseboards, you're not just helping people that we take pity on because of what they look like. You're also creating a more meritocratic environment where everyone feels their work is what actually matters. That is the ultimate driver of talent retention. So when you remove prerequisites from jobs, when you remove prior experience, skills, talents, education, things that people actually worked for or earned over time from job applications, and then allow anybody who has or does not have such things into a position, you're fostering an environment where everyone feels their work is what actually matters. Why did I bother getting a job when I can just open up a daycare? Point 2, support dissent. It may seem counterintuitive, yet welcoming dissenting opinions and pushback can help DEI long term. Do you simply welcome them, or do you take them into consideration honestly? As Yoshino explained, quote, "It leads to preference falsification, where people will just nod along with you because they're too terrified to disagree with you because you haven't changed the psychological safety where they can do that, but that doesn't change their views," unquote. If you're still going to be pushing DEI, okay, you're trying to say that now you're going to change DEI to be more meritocratic, then why call it DEI? Because DEI is the opposite of meritocracy. It is the antithesis of meritocracy. So if you're still going to be pushing DEI, if you're still going to be pushing the idea that you have, that this individual over here, this individual that has shown up, is marginalized for no other reason than what they look like, and you're taking pity on them, and you're going to level the playing field by lowering standards, how is anyone who's working for your company going to feel like they have the power to say anything in opposition when you've already set the standard as bottom rung? And what benefit does anybody have who wants to have an easy job going to say about a dissenting opinion about it? This is, oh my God. Practical pivots. They really like using that word. Pivot. It's not, we're not changing things, we're pivoting. By inviting those in the middle that might be on the fence, because there's nobody that's on the opposite side, we bring in more potential allies. So by humoring people who have skepticism about your methods, you make them feel like they belong. See if you can ease them into it. Some critiques can help us strengthen our strategies and genuinely help everyone more equally. While there is no definitive phrase or words for the future of DEI, well, I've heard that fair might be a good alternative, or targeted universalism. Yoshino and Glasgow suggest Project Equality. Man, if you wanted to make something sound like an insidious dystopian sci-fi environment conspiracy theory, Project Equality sounds about right. There is a unified message that everyone benefits from a more fair, has she copyrighted or trademarked that yet? Fair and inclusive workplace, not just women and people of color. Why did you bring that up? True inclusion works better for all. How much longer is this article? It's almost done. Okay. Practical pivots for retention. Quote, "It turns out there's actually a lot of real, concrete, practical, systemic debiasing work that you can continue to do in a way that is both lawful and politically and culturally popular," Glasgow pointed out. Oh, do tell. If you are ready to move from intention to impact, here are 3 pivots you can make today to shore up your talent. Number 1, audit your palpable benefits. Look at your promotion and bonus processes. Are they based on clear, standardized outputs, or are they influenced by proximity bias or subjective cultural fit? I guess it depends on what the particular requirements are for the department you're talking about, because promotion and bonus processes for the sales department is probably going to be far different than that of the accounting department. But okay, are they based on clear, standardized outputs? Or are they influenced by proximity bias or subjective Okay, I can imagine quite a bit, but I would really appreciate it when these professionals, these subject matter experts in DEI, would give an active example, just so I don't have to guess. Number 2, broaden your inclusion lens. Inclusion shouldn't be just be about race and gender. Well, tell that to DEI. Welcome groups, demographics that have felt historically ignored, such as people of faith, neurodivergent talent, age diversity, or those from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. You know what? Here's an idea. What if you could cut past considerations at all for race, gender, faith, neurodivergence, age, socioeconomic? What if, I know this is a crazy idea, what if Dr. Doom became Sorcerer Supreme? No, sorry. What if the Punisher became Venom? No, sorry, that's something different. No, what if you set all of those things aside and ask the question, do you have the capability to fulfill the job requirements? Full stop. Then you won't have to worry about any of this stuff. I know, it's a crazy idea. It's a crazy idea. If only there was some other kind of, I don't know, long-standing legal framework for this. Like, I don't know, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which basically tells you you are breaking the law if you even consider those elements in your hiring processes. So why not just set them aside entirely and focus on merit? I know, it's a crazy idea. You can save yourself all of this whinging, all of this pearl clutching, all this hand-wringing, or are we going to violate the law or get some negatively political backlash from this? Just don't do it. Just don't do it. You have the perfect escape hatch to never have to consider someone's race or gender or religion or their age or whatever. Just don't do it and focus on what they can do. Do they have the skills, the experience, the education necessary to fulfill the job requirements? Yes or no? I know you guys hate binaries, but it's a very binary process. Either they fulfill it or they don't. The end. Okay, the long game. Quote, every single time our society, right, sooner or late. Wait, what? Okay, I will read it as it is written. Quote, every single time our society, right, sooner or late, sometimes it took longer than it should, chose the value of equality. So this is a blip. This is a moment in time where it looks like the values of equality are besieged, but there's no doubt in my mind that ultimately we will prevail, unquote, Yoshino offered as hope for the future. You know, he's absolutely right, but he's on the completely opposite side of the mirror on this one. Because, yeah, ultimately, bit by bit, incrementally, we've done better over time as a society. DEI is the blip. DEI and the focus on this is the exception to what our value system generally works towards. DEI does not value equality. DEI is the antithesis, the enemy of equality. It's a very interesting way that he phrased that. The project of equality isn't a one-and-done training session. No. We must stretch out our paychecks over the long term. I have to make a career out of this. It is a series of consistent and intentional systemic actions. While the legal and political headlines might feel overwhelming, most Americans fundamentally believe in fairness. Yes, and we are artificially tying what we do to fairness, both in this article and the previous one. Now, diversity, equity, and inclusion is just about fairness, guys. So we're going to lower the standards down to the bottom rung to make sure everybody can succeed and gets a participation trophy. That's fair. By shifting your focus from lifting individuals to leveling systems, you aren't just avoiding a lawsuit. You're not just avoiding a lawsuit, you're building a workplace where every human feels seen, heard, and valued. And in the race for top talent, that is one of the few competitive advantages that truly lasts. Holy cats, guys. Holy cats. Simon Wilkins, turns out I couldn't get back to sleep anyway, so I'm going to play some Animal Crossing while I catch up on this. Well, farm a carrot in my name. You can farm carrots in Animal Crossing, can't you? I've never played Animal Crossing, so I don't know. Advocates Diabli, have they as of yet explained why we need gender parity other than they want it? No. No. 50-50 gender representation in leadership has been a stated goal by numerous companies for the last decade because it looks good. Because again, it's the God of the gaps theory of statistical analysis. If you see a gap, if you see a disparity between two numbers, the explanation for that disparity is inequity, is something sinister, is an ist or an ism. It couldn't be just, that's how things hashed out. No. There must be some evil conspiracy that says bigger number bad, lower number victim must even. Otherwise, it's not fair. Because fairness is an aesthetic goal, not a results goal or a personal merit goal. No. But moving on to our last article. An opinion piece. Wait. Oh no! I didn't even know this! I didn't even realize. I didn't know this until I looked at it. We have our same speakers from the last article. This is not the same article, is it? So the last article was from Forbes, from Kenji Yoshino and David Glasgow, from the Berkeley Institute or whatever, Belonging and Inclusion, etc., or whatever it is. And now they have an opinion piece in the Los Angeles Times. Are they just doing an attack on the press this week, or is this the same article? DEI is a path to meritocracy, not an alternative. What? I swear I did not realize, because the Forbes article, in the top of it, it didn't mention who the interview subjects were, and that's nuts. Okay, yeah. So this is from the Los Angeles Times. And these guys are the authors of this article. Okay, so they're not being interviewed. These guys are the authors. Man, they are doing a press offensive this week. In the move to obliterate diversity, equity, and inclusion, one word, merit, has stood out as an effective cudgel. Why? Why is it so effective? The president's executive orders claim to restore meritocracy and merit-based opportunity from the scourge of DEI. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth condemns the, quote, toxic ideological garbage, unquote, of inclusive practices while lauding the idea of merit only. Activists against diversity efforts echo this theme. Heather McDonald, author of the book When Race Trumps Merit, states, quote, at present you can have diversity or you can have meritocracy. You cannot have both, unquote. When the chief executive of Scale AI argued that DEI should be replaced by MEI, merit, excellence, and intelligence, Elon Musk amplified the proposed shift as great. I mean, you're pushing in an open door here. What are you arguing here? As scholars of diversity initiatives, we agree that merit should be a top priority in admissions, hiring, and promotions. But a major reason our society still needs diversity, equity, and inclusion, after all, is to overcome a long history of unfairly assessing people based on criteria other than merit. Stop. So, you're going to solve historical inequities by applying systemic discrimination. Second verse, same as the first. Such unfairness can arise from decisions based on disadvantage, such as racism or sexism. Yeah, as in white people inherently bad, men inherently toxic. Therefore, to fix said problem, get rid of white people in favor of non-white people and hire women simply to put women in places of positions of power because they need to be there because women. It also arises from decisions based on advantage, such as nepotism or pay-to-play arrangements, or decisions based on perceived advantage, such as white privilege or male privilege. Promoting merit always has been intertwined with promoting equal opportunity. Yes, equal opportunity, not equality of outcome. Tell me again about your leveling strategy, and we need to make that connection clearer in the public debate. No. No one who thinks about this for 5 seconds needs to be clarified on the idea that promoting merit has been intertwined with equal opportunity. Because anybody who understands reality versus the DEI version already knows that. Those of us who support a more egalitarian society should be able to reclaim the merit buzzword from the anti-inclusion ideologues. Okay, I thought my migraine was going away. This is just adding to it. So you're promoting an egalitarian society when you've already said you want to lower standards to get rid of prerequisites for advancement. Not letting people just rise and fall on their own merits. No, you want to lower you want the level. You know, it's useful that we had the previous article to hear their arguments and their plan for the future here. A significant obstacle to doing this has been a flank of the pro-inclusion community that has an allergy to the word merit. Yeah, because it is in direct contradiction to what they want. Actual merit defeats all of DEI's intentions, thus feeding the misconception that it belongs to their opponents. Well, it does, because you guys are not for merit. You have conditions on merit. You have a pre-filter on merit. Somewhere in the hiring pipeline, you have a filter of race and/or gender, and sometimes orientation before you get to who deserves the job. Some advocates for diversity initiatives argue that merit and meritocracy are hollow, a myth, or the antithesis of fair. Yes, the myth of meritocracy is a phrase I have looked at and been told about for years now. Because they don't believe in meritocracy. They don't want merit. They accept the detractors' framing of the issue, in which an inclusion-centered approach is an alternative to a merit-based system. No, they're not accepting the detractors' frame. That they are promoting it. They are actively and religiously promoting the idea of the myth of meritocracy. They're not the weak ones in this argument. They're the vanguard. What are you talking about? Many diversity leaders have told us they have a visceral negative reaction to the term merit and urge advocates not to use it. Because they don't believe in it. Listen to what they're telling you. It's not the word, it's the entire concept. They do not believe in merit. They say that merit is a myth. They say that merit is racist and sexist. They've been saying it for 10 years. We find that inclusion advocates who chafe at emphasizing merit usually do so for some mix of 3 reasons. First, the concept of merit leaves a lot of discretion, so the dominant group that defines merit will abuse that discretion to favor itself. In one study, a sociologist asked white Californians how much weight college admissions officers should place on high school grade point average. Okay, respondents were more likely to emphasize GPA when primed to perceive black students as white applicants' main competition for college slots. Let me try that again. Respondents were much more likely to emphasize GPA when primed to perceive black students as white applicants' main competition for college slots. Also, why is black capitalized and white isn't? You know, when you're trying to pretend that you believe in merit over, aesthetic considerations, your own grammar gives you away a little bit. When primed to perceive Asian American students as the main competition to white students, GPA abruptly became less important in the respondents' minds. This result is likely because of stereotypes associating Asian American students with higher GPAs and black students with lower GPAs. Sorry, who was promoting a leveling of standards? Lowering. Who was promoting getting rid of prerequisites, i.e., elements of personal merit for job applications? You still assess people as victims or villains on the basis of their race. You still do. Stop pretending that you don't. Okay. I'm getting too worked up. I'm getting too worked up. They say one thing in Forbes, and then they try to sugarcoat something else in their own article. Oh, it's obviously a bad thing to have stereotypes about how people assess one another on the basis of race. By the way, never mind that we said in this other article that in order to achieve a more diverse workforce, we're going to lower the standards down because we don't want to exclude diverse talent with things like prerequisites. Okay. I'm getting far too worked up, and honestly, my headache has not completely gone away. So, there you go. Man, okay. I might have to come back to that article another time. I might have to read through that one again and compare and contrast more closely with the Forbes article, because that is something else. That's something else to be asked point blank by people to describe your personal philosophy and framework and what should happen with DEI in 2026. And then read a completely different article written by the interviewees where they try to discombobulate everything that they said and do a "who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes" with what they previously said. And just constantly contradict themselves. Because they have no solution to this. They don't have a good answer. Well, we shouldn't villainize merit. You're right, you shouldn't. And yet you are. By saying you want to bring the standards down in order to not exclude people based on work experience or education or other skills-based requirements before getting a job, what do you think you're doing? You're saying merit is irrelevant. You're diminishing the value of merit for employment and jobs and opportunities. And instead going for the lowest common denominator. Because you don't expect anything better from people that you have framed as inherently needing your pity. Oh, but it's wrong to make stereotypes part of your decision-making process. Yeah, I know I've read articles or statements from those guys before in that particular outfit that they work for. Absolute madness. But hey, it's 2026. DEI is new all over again, right? Anyway, that's as far as my stamina and my headache is going to allow me today, guys. I apologize for the truncated article there, but I just... That might be an item for a different day. But there you go. A couple more comments here, and then we will wrap up for the day. I don't think they expected anyone to see both articles. Possibly. And that was just kismet. That was just serendipity, because I had no idea that they were being interviewed for the Forbes article, and I didn't even make the connection to who wrote that article. Equity scribe. Oh yes, equity, sir. Equity, not equality. Equity. The Vexorcist. Hey, Scribble. I guess I could be a singular scribble. It's true. I mean, if you work really hard, this could all be one continuous line. Let's see. Mike Savage, the cure historic inequity with current inequity. Got it. Perfect summation. And Daryl Odell, DEI is a path to meritocracy. Sure and up is down. Truth is a lie, and the sun revolves around the earth. Sure. Yeah. If we all make everybody think exactly the same way we do, equality without diversity. Because we can't have diversity. Diversity of opinion, diversity of thought. Oh, we'll entertain if you have a different opinion, but we're still forging ahead with our plans. Some emulation. They want to have separate opinions listed in 2 articles so they can use them as sources for any bases they need to cover. Interesting theory. Yeah. It's like, well, if you read the interview I did in Forbes, or, well, if you look at the article we wrote in Los Angeles Times. Yeah. Anyway, everybody, that is the show for today. That's the latest and the greatest on DEI. The wheel just keeps on turning. And we'll see. I'm still waiting. Because waiting is the hardest part. I'm waiting for actual consequences to befall an organization, a business, an institution. Real consequences, meaningful consequences, consequences that will disincentivize this stuff from going forward, and consequences that will not just be a fly-by-night operation. Because as I've said before, seeing DEI being brought to heel in some way, shape, or form right now is great. But we have to make sure that the laws that have been around since 1964 and the laws that have been passed since and all these precedents being set now stick for the future. Because as soon as a friendly administration comes back into office, if there aren't safeguards put into place to prevent this stuff from happening in the future, or simple ways to detect it and to punish it, it'll just happen again. So, waiting for that poster child of consequence. Supposedly Verizon and other companies are being looked into for past indiscretions in DEI. And Andrea Lucas over at the EEOC has made promises that this year something's going to happen. All right. We're almost 1 month in to the 12-month clock for me wanting to see something come about from that. So, time will tell. Otherwise, everybody, thank you so much for joining me. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very, very little to do. Everybody who donated, either to myself or to, I forgot to mention, at the top of the chat box, guys, there's a link to the Blood Cancer United. I have to get used to that now because Leukemia Lymphoma Society changed their name. Blood Cancer United, everybody. Please take a look at that link when you have the opportunity. If you can donate, please do so. But even if you can't, if you can share that out on social media, that would be appreciated. Also, do you have a Discord? Or do you have Discord? Would you like to join the Discord server? Well, to join the Discord server, you just have to simply click on the link I put in the chat right now. You'll find yourself on the landing channel called Say Hello. And in addition to saying hello, you just have to say the secret word. The secret word will tell me that you're not a bot. Actually watch the stream and have thus earned the right, the privilege, the entitlement to join the Discord server. And today's secret word is targeted universalism. Just say, hello, targeted universalism, and I'll know that you watched this show. One more note, If there is a content creator out there that you appreciate, whether it's me or somebody else, and especially if they're a smaller channel, please take the time, if you can, to share and retweet their stuff and let people know that you like it and why you do, because really that does help out a lot. You guys are the best algorithm, and YouTube oftentimes is not the best friend of YouTubers, if you can believe it. Otherwise, everybody, I hope you have a good rest of your day. If you have the day off for Martin Luther King's birthday, congratulations. If you don't, I hope the rest of your day goes smoothly and quietly. I hope you have a good rest of your week. And I hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon. And I will see you on the next one. Take care. And bye-bye.